that snap. You said that snap?
I just released a Viessa video not too long ago, and with that vid, I didn't have certain modules and I did a few mistakes. So with that said, this video will be my new set of Viessa builds that shreds any content. What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new TFD video, coming at you with some crazy damage Viessa loadouts. So Viessa is one comfortable descendant. She has quite a lot going for her in her kit. She has speed, she has projectiles, area lockdown, and crowd control, and all of those can do damage. In my previous video, I had a build for bossing that was just tanky and didn't utilize her abilities that much. But particularly in this video, either build is capable of dealing ability damage paired with strong weapons. I now have collected all of Viessa's skill modules, tested all of them, and found only 3 to be her best ones, while the others are pretty much okay. Let's start with Hypothermia, a very deadly one. This skill module augments all of her skills. So when you cast any of your skills, you will trigger a secondary effect that will deal damage over time, and this damage over time is singular aligned. It also turns her 4th skill from tech to singular, applying more DOT. And this is great for passive damage that hits pretty hard. Also, using the full Polar Knight set does not synergize with Hypothermia, so that was a big mess up on my part. The second skill module is Bloodedness. This skill module augments her second skill, removing your speed and ice trails. It's unfortunate, but grants you additional effects for your other skills. And that is a 5% skill power increase, but when you look at the numbers, it's only a 3% increase, regardless of enemies' resistances. The numbers should be consistent, so this might be a bug. On top of that, it reduces the skill cost and any cooldown by 20%, allowing you to spam skills more frequently. And lastly, Cohesion. This is an ultimate Viessa exclusive skill module. This increases your passive ice spheres from 3 all the way up to 5 and reduces the cooldown by 5 seconds as well. So let's take a look at all the component sets and reactors to showcase what's preferred when using specific builds. Alright, so without further ado, let's take a look at all the components, reactors, weapons, and builds that go into this, or into these Viessa builds. So I'm going to start off with the components because I'll be interchanging them here and there. Right now I have the Slayer set. This is the same one I used for my Lepic video. Now the benefits of Slayer set is that it's really good with your general rounds weapons. So if I'm using an assault rifle, SMG, this set is pretty good with that. Does make your skills a bit more expensive to cast. You require 15% more mana to cast your abilities. However, you gain a 26% increase to your skill power. So this is also really good for some upfront damage. And the unfortunate part, Viessa doesn't have any toad skills, so that last bit doesn't do anything for her. So it's only the skill power and the ammo economy. The other combo is going to be the Polar Knight set, but over here I'm running a two-piece. So I have the Polar Knight set and the Annihilation set. So I get increase in my chill power and some bonus duration. This is your comfortable two-piece that you can run anywhere. And if you want to maximize more, you're going to run the full Polar Knight set. So you will have that two-piece that gives you chill power, and then for each frostbite stack inflicted upon an enemy, your firearm crit damage is increased. Your skill critical hit damage is then further increased up to 10 stacks for 5 seconds. So applying cold effects is pretty huge. So when you go to a boss, you can just drop your 4th ability, it's going to tick on the enemy, or any enemy walking around your 2nd ability, boom, you get bonus critical damage. And you have that crit damage on your abilities, and this has a 30% chance of triggering. Unfortunately, it doesn't work too well when it comes to Hypothermia. Now for the reactors, you want 4 types of reactors. This is where it gets a bit complicated. So if you're mainly focusing on Hypothermia, you want a fusion reactor or even a singular reactor. That's if you're going to use your 4th ability as a big nuke to deal continuous damage. However, if you're going to use Hypothermia as just being there to deal damage over time, then stick to the fusion reactor. Over here I have my Nazeistra mounting. As you can see, it grants me skill cooldown and critical damage on the substats, but I get that chill power and fusion skill. So it affects my 1st and 3rd ability, since I'll be spamming abilities here and there and get that bonus damage. If you're going to use a fusion reactor with Hypothermia, so you can run the two-piece set, chill, and the Annihilation set, or run the full Slayer set. The other combo I recommend is the additional skill attack when attacking Colossi, and that singular skill boost power ratio, and with a chill and fusion boost ratio. Over here I have the Thundercage mounting, so this is pretty nice for bossing as well. So the other combo is running a cold Bloodedness build. Right now I have the tech skill power boost and the fusion skill power boost, so it's affecting my first and third ability with that fusion skill boost ratio, and because it has the tech boost, it's increasing the damage on my fourth ability alone. And over here, this is what I use for my general bossing build if I'm running a hypothermia setup, and it gives me a singular skill boost power ratio. I like to use this one a lot more if I'm using my eternal willpower. However, for some crazy damage and being an on-field support while debuffing the boss, then I like to use my Nazeistra mounting, because Nazeistra has that awesome debuff called Phantasm. This unique ability reduces the defenses of the enemy. I still have to rank it up 2 more times. It's still crafting, but then again, you can also heal your allies, but we don't want to heal allies. We want our allies to deal even more damage. So right now that defense shred is really nice, and plus this weapon deals a lot of damage. On top of that, it looks really sexy. So it has a base critical damage multiplier of 2 times, a weak point damage multiplier of 1.7, and a base crit rate of 36. So this thing hits really hard, and it has 8 bullets in the magazine. So let's take a look at the weapon builds real quick. Now for my Nazeistra here, I have base damage, crit rate, crit damage, with crit damage. All of this is just upfront damage. I have a reload speed modifier here with some bonus crit damage, because adding this crit damage multiplier does reduce our reload speed just a little bit. And plus, having faster reload speed is consistent damage, especially on a hand cannon. Now, weak point expansion paired with your weak point sight. This is crazy amounts of weak point increase. Take a look at my weak point damage. It's at 4.6 times. That's huge. Paired with a 3.7 times critical damage. I'm dealing a lot of damage with every shot on weak points over here. And plus, hitting an enemy's weak point reduces their defenses, so every consecutive shot is dealing even more damage. And I'm increasing my fire rate here just to output even more damage. And the final mod, after a couple more catalysts, I'm thinking about adding a bit more magazine with either expanded weapon charge or constant. You can't see it right now, but it gives me some magazine and critical damage. I know elemental damage is really good to have, but for how much damage we're dealing with this weapon alone, I decided not to go for elemental damage. And of course, for the affixes, I went for that crit rate, crit damage, bonus damage to Colossi. Unfortunately, not in gold, but that's definitely what you want in gold, and that firearm attack. However, if you want to swap that firearm attack to weak point damage, that's also really good, but we already have so much weak point going on with our modding that you can just add in more base damage. Now, for my assault rifle, I'm pretty sure you've seen it in my Olympic video, but for those who haven't, this is one of the strongest weapons you could use if you don't like the Thundercage. But the Thundercage is so good as well. But if you want to use something that's different and a lot easier to invest in, because you don't have to use so many of those reroll materials. Now, I'm going to start off with the Hypothermia build. Now, it is running the Nazeistra mounting, of course. This is my personal favorite. You can definitely run this combo with any mounted weapon you want. So you have the Polar Knight set and the Annihilation combo. This is for general gameplay and a little bit of bossing if you want to, but I'll show you a bit more damage focused Hypothermia Bossing loadout. And believe it or not, it's just changing a reactor and your components, but the build stays the same. But looking at the build itself, we have Shock Punch here just for the capacity. You can use Grapple, whatever. I just don't want to bother leveling up anything else. Hypothermia for that crazy damage, and DOT. You can look at all my abilities. They're all affected by hypothermia, and this grants you crazy ice needle damage right away. So it's nice passive damage and a little bit of burst. We have our survivability with increased HP, defenses. Over here, I have Chill Specialist. This gives me a really strong chill skill power increase of 81% compared to Focus on Chill. Focus on Chill does grant me that skill cooldown. So if you like to use this and you don't care about that little bit of increase, then this is just fine. Skill cooldown is pretty massive to have. So yes, this is also a great recommendation if you want to go this route. But I just wanted that little bit of extra damage when it comes to chill power. Otherwise, either one is fine. Skill amplification over here is my skill power modifier. Before, I was using Technician because I still didn't have this mod. This is a massive boost to all of my abilities as it increases their motion value to the next level. Viessa already has really high multipliers on her abilities, so this just makes it deal even more damage. Skill expansion for the range. Range is very important on VS, especially with her fourth ability and the explosion radius on her burst. Skill extension just to give the duration so our blizzard lasts longer and our abilities last a bit longer. We have crit rate and crit damage because her abilities can crit. So if you look over here, with that crit rate, crit damage, I do have 30% increase with a 2.9 times critical damage multiplier. If you want to focus a bit more on crits, you can replace 2 of these mods with frontlines and emergency measures. But then again, I prefer more utility and having a well-rounded kit so I can do every content and not focus on one thing alone. So speaking of the utility and convenience, I do have strong mentality. This reduces the skill cost, so my abilities cost a lot less MP. And finally, nimble fingers, skill cooldown, so I can cast my abilities a bit more frequently. So if you want to run Hypothermia with Bossing, you can still keep a fusion reactor and change the external components to the Slayer set. So something like this, we just change the components. And if you don't want a mounted weapon and you want to be more flexible, you can definitely use a purple reactor. Over here, I have an assault rifle equipped. I don't necessarily have to have this active at all times. It just has to be equipped in one of the 3 slots. So this is really nice. And as you notice, it gives me that singular boost ratio. So it also affects the singular damage over time. So this is pretty much what I use for bossing because I can switch between my 2 main weapons and still be able to deal a lot of damage. And of course, I get that utility when it comes to general rounds. So sticking with the same setup with the components and reactors, let's check out the Cold Bloodedness build. It's pretty much similar. However, it's a bit more spammy when it comes to our ability casts. If you've noticed, I changed my defense mod to Iron Defense. This gives me skill power modifier. And I went with MP conversion, reducing my cooldown. So if I'm fighting bosses, I want to pop my 4th ability as much as possible. Having a decent amount of duration on my 2nd ability, this will last for 27 seconds. So I'm able to cast my 4th ability twice with this buff still active. So that means in a rotation, you can start off with the 2nd ability, DPS the weak points, weaken it, bring it down, and you can cast the 4th ability again just to get more damage. And then you can fill in your 1st and 3rd ability in between. So this is a nice way to get a little bit of burst damage. However, for those who want decent damage, crowd controlling the boss, and still be able to put out a lot of damage, then I went with a different mounting here. This is the Thundercage mounting with chill skill power boost ratio and duration up, along with the full polar Knight set to give me that skill critical hit damage and firearm critical damage. I paired it up with my Thundercage over here. You can see I have my crit rate, crit damage, weak point damage, and magazine capacity. This is very important to have, especially if it's a fast firing weapon and you're going to be dumping your magazine fairly quickly. And this weapon has a base critical rate of 20%, and we get a little boost to that critical rate thanks to those affixes. And because this weapon already has a decent amount of weak point damage at 1.2. Not the greatest, but still decent enough. We can scale that up a bit. And since it's crit focus, we get 2 scaling modifiers. So the build in question is like this. You have your base damage over here, magazine capacity, critical damage, additional weak point damage, and our fire rate increase. Over here, I have firing fiesta. When we blow our loads, reload, and then we'll get 3 seconds of infinite ammo. Pretty much a pocket glay. And lastly, I have elemental damage. Because this is a general rounds, it fires fairly quickly, unlike impact rounds. So adding another instance of damage in the form of elemental damage that scales up your base attack is really, really good and strong. However, if you don't want to focus too much on elemental damage at the moment, you could always switch it out for one of these 2 mods, increasing your reload speed and increasing the magazine even further. And of course, the last mod here will be better insight for additional critical rates. So I'll at least get to 30% critical rate. But at the moment, this shreds anything. And with this setup, I'm using the called Cohesion, which only works on Ultimate Viessa. This increases the number of your ice spheres, pretty much your passive, so it grants you even more. It works really well with the Frostbite combo and that Polar Knight set. And I changed it up to multi-talented just to give me some flexibility with my skill cooldown, skill cost, and a bit more duration at the same time. So with the Cold Cohesion set, it's more of a neutral Viessa build, meaning it works for pretty much any type of combo. So if you want, you can even change this to a tech increase. So right here I have a Thundercage version. This comes with a tech boost and a fusion skill boost. So both of those work, but I like to have my 1st and 3rd ability up a bit more. So yeah, folks, these are my updated Viessa builds, and I do hope you give them a try and enjoy them. That has been it for me. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe for more First Descendant content, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, a peace. Bye-bye now.